Try two. All right. Try two. And it's going to be better than number one, y'all. If you were here for the live stream on Saturday morning, we had Felix Montano, who is in the virtual green room right now and has his Wi-Fi back up. It is possible that Hollywood tried to sabotage our live stream. I don't know. Nothing is beyond reason at this point because as you saw, if you were part of the live stream on Saturday, Felix was kind of going in and out. So it took 2 days, but his Wi-Fi has been restored. So now we have him actually on a real laptop. Quick orders of business right now before we get started. This should be streaming on Rockfin right now. This is the first time we've tried co-streaming onto Rockfin. So I don't know if you're watching on Rockfin or if you have a Rockfin account, but if you wouldn't mind letting me know if you see this on Rockfin, that would be awesome. Just so I kind of know what's working and what's not. If you are not on any of my other platforms, consider doing that. The links are in the description. You can go to Locals. I just mentioned Rockfin. Odyssey should be streaming this also right now. My Patreon page is a place where I upload also exclusive content. And just be aware that Patreon has its own issues with censorship. So I always add, if you're on Patreon, you should probably be on one of my other platforms as well. So let's see. Rockfin is Rokfin. Someone's asking if I can spell it. Rokfin. So I hope everybody's doing well. This is going to be a very interesting live stream, and I'm not going to tell you anymore. Oh, I lost Felix. Hang on a second. He's gone. Just when I told you that his Wi-Fi was working, I lost him. So that's okay, because we'll give him a second to come back into the stream. So hang on a second. Let's let him know. Oh, he's calling me, but we're live. So hang on, everyone. Hang on. Hello, Felix. What happened? Hello, Felix. All right. Can you just... Yes. Okay. Rockfin says starting soon. Nothing playing on Rockfin. So nothing's playing on Rockfin. It's okay. Okay, ready to go live. Yes, we'll go live. I'll go live on Rockfin, even though I'm on the phone literally with the guy I'm supposed to have on the stream, but that's fine. And we have 66 people watching, so it's 1/6 less than the devil's number. So there must be something to this live stream. Felix, what is it about you? What is it about you? Like someone's like, come on, man. Hollywood does not want this to happen. Okay, Rockfin is now playing, and I see Felix. I see Felix. Da 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 da. All right, here he is. Can we hear him?
Hi.
Okay. Mark, this is hilarious. Yeah. Mark, I am now convinced there is a conspiracy.
I have this nervousness now after Saturday, and then just now it's like, really? Anyway, and also I'm not wearing my glasses today. My friend Robin Summerfield said that, she said, do you think the glasses are a good choice? And I knew exactly what that meant. So I got rid of the glasses.
So that's how they say it in Hollywood when they don't like something about you. They go, do you think that's a good choice?
Yeah. Do you think that's a wise choice? I mean, it's bold.
I don't want to know what she thinks about my glasses. Did she? I don't want to know. Hey, everybody in the chat room.
Everybody I've told about you loves. Oh, you mean the girl with the glasses? Yes. I mean, this is your signature.
That's but I like your glasses.
It's like a signature song. When you have an act, you have a signature song, or
Okay.
So and when they do your caricatures, the glasses will feature in very importantly. I mean,
okay.
It'll be okay. Anyway, whatever.
Well, it's very It's nerve-wracking a little bit to have that because now it's like, well, do I have to wear these until I'm 90? I mean, what did I lock myself into by just wearing? I didn't even need to get blue. They were the only option. You
might be too young, but you remembered Sally Jesse Raphael and her red glasses. She had a picture.
Yeah, that's true.
So
good thing she's no she's no longer around on, because I
I
would
don't
hate
even
for
know
people to
where
think I was
she is.
competing.
Yeah. Anyway.
They say, "Wow, we can actually hear him this time." Okay, because I
Oh,
did
good.
boost. I boosted Felix's mic, so
Oh, so we have
he'll let me know.
we have some returning people for part 2, so that's good.
Yes, yeah, we
Okay.
have some returning people, and I boosted your mic. So if y'all think that I'm too loud or he's too loud or whatever, let me know in the chat. And I've figured out in StreamYard now how to lower the volume a little bit. So
I've never been accused of not being too loud because I'm a Cuban and we're very loud.
well, I was in television news, so I still talk like that a lot. And I feel like even when I'm just making dinner, I'm like to my husband, Lynn, could you please set the table? Thank you. Coming up, we'll have hot roast,
That's like people in musical theater, and they would run to their house, get the vacuum and we'll clean today. They'd musicalize everything. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's hard. It is kind of hard to turn off, but aren't you glad that you and I have both had that outlet? Because I feel like if I didn't do that for a career or just like have a place to just talk ad nauseum and whatever, I would come home and drive my family crazy.
Yeah, I have a hard time living with myself, so it's
get it out of your system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark says audio is perfect.
Okay,
here we go. Yep. Return for another attempt. Okay. So Felix, let's start back at the beginning. You were telling us the fascinating story of how your family came here from Cuba. So can we go there? Let's go back to the beginning, if you don't mind.
So I was born in 1962. My father literally got on a boat with 4 friends. They were renting a little boat or something in Cuba. This was right after Castro took over. And I think my dad was also maybe wanted for protesting against Castro. And so he was getting on this boat. The owner said, you better go now because I don't want to take this risk anymore because I know what you guys are up to. So they started rowing, box of saltine crackers and no compass. And they could have just been going around in a circle. They rowed all night and they followed some light that my dad likes to say. There was this light and they just go towards light. It might be a ship, it might be land, could have been Havana for all they knew, just going in circles. In the morning, they landed on a shore and it was Key West. And so he had literally had the shirt on his back. And then from then on, within 11 years, we achieved the American dream living in Northern California. House, white picket fence, 2 dogs, 2 cars. Mom stayed at home for a while. And in the Bay Area in Northern California. So he met my mother here. She had come over just before Castro took over. And so that's that. So I have this.
What did your dad do? Did you say, I may have missed that, but did you say what he did for a living when he moved here?
He had worked in a shoe repair place that my uncles owned for a little bit. And then we moved to California because we thought there were more opportunities here. My parents thought there'd be more opportunities at that time here in California. And he started as a busboy at the El Rancho Motel in Millbrae, California, near Burlingame. And then and my mom cleaned toilets in a hospital, housekeeping in a hospital. And then they worked their way up he worked his way up in a hospital from a painter to building and grounds and maintenance and construction at Mills Hospital in San Mateo. So, it was great. I mean, it was great. And this was by now it's like 1971 and we had all of that going on, and then I moved down here at 17, left high school halfway through my senior year, finished the correspondence, came down here because I wanted to dance. I auditioned for scholarship, didn't get it, but I stayed down here working the chocolate counter at Neiman Marcus in Beverly Hills. And then, I know. And then I auditioned for Mitzi Gaynor, an old Hollywood star. She did South Pacific. She had an act. And I auditioned for Mitzi Gaynor at 17, right before my 18th birthday and graduation. So I was performing at 17 with her on stage in Vancouver with 10 guys in Bob Mackie outfits and costumes, which was, just heaven for me, having just come down to Hollywood. So I got bit and that was it. And then I've had 41 years in this business of doing a lot of dancing, great dance career. And in the last 4 years, which kind of segues into where we are, I was, I'm 59 and I was like, I need to get into something a little bit more stable. And so I thought I will do background. I had a friend, a director who was directing, who was assistant director on SWAT. So he said, why don't you do, I was driving Uber, I was doing all sorts of things, gig economy, because I'd been a fitness trainer and that was dying here in LA because it was so saturated. And I'd also been fired from one of the main gym chains in 2008-9 because I had spoken politically about Prop 8 at the time. And at the time I was for Obama. Don't ask.
What was Prop 8?
Huh?
What was that?
What was what?
What was Prop 8? Can you remind us?
Prop 8 was a gay marriage initiative here in California that was a big deal.
So you spoke out for it, and you were fired from the gym?
Well, I was gaying out in my business. I'd been in the fitness industry on and off as my bread and butter for 30 years. I started in New York as an aerobics instructor. You know, I've done everything. So, but dancing led into that. It was a natural extension of that. And so, yeah, but I got fired because there was someone there that kept reporting me for having spoken up. I had a treadmill class, and we watched TVs, you know, as you're running on the treadmill. So I was one of the first treadmill classes, high intensity interval. And it would be like Wednesday or something after the debates between Hillary and whoever. And so everybody would always talk about it because we were watching the TVs, and I got, you know, burned by that. So that was my first taste of having to keep my mouth shut.
Wasn't Obama originally against gay marriage?
Yeah, he evolved. Yeah.
Okay.
He evolved, yeah.
Okay.
He evolved sometime during his first term, I guess, or something like that. But anyway, so I started doing background, and I really loved it. I was lucky. My look, I was SWAT, I was military, I was Secret Service for Julia Louis-Dreyfus in the last season of Veep, which was a dream job, and I've had some dream jobs in my life. But that ranks as one of the top 5 because, I mean, just the creative team and that cast. And I was one of her 4 Secret Service, so I really got to watch rewrites and her timing, and it was amazing. And I do commercials and stuff, so I was working like 4 or 5 days a week in background, making really good money, making my health plan 1 at SAG, and happy as a clam. And I thought, you know, I'll just fly under the radar. You know, I'm here in my little bubble in Hollywood, and you know, I'm fine. I'm old now. You know, I'm 59. I'm going to be retiring soon. Well, then COVID happened, and it basically annihilated my career as I knew it. Go ahead.
Okay. First question, because in the last stream that we did on Saturday, you talked a little bit about, in the meantime, before we get to COVID, the political figures that you were working with, like Newsom, Gillibrand. Okay. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yes. So in 2009-10, I have a friend who was involved in fundraising for the Democrats. And, you know, we had fundraisers for Tim Kaine. In that year, there was a lot of that, and Garcetti we even co-hosted a fundraising event with Garcetti for Newsom when he was running for lieutenant governor at the time. I was one of the co-hosts, and I knew a lot of people here in LA and in New York. I also connected. So this friend was taking my fitness classes. I knew how passionate I was, and I had been bullied in school very badly, and that was the year that there was a lot of bullying in the fall of that school year. So I connected with Senator Gillibrand. She was running for Hillary's position. She had to run now and be elected as opposed to being appointed at the time. So I joined her and did my testimony as and told her my whole story of being bullied and how that connected with pedophilia and being targeted by pedophiles, you know, people that were bullied and outcasts, and how that all connected. And anyway, long story, that's a whole nother story and chapter, but they were both a-holes, and her team and her just finally threw me under the bus because they didn't want to go there. It was the bullying, because it was gay perceived bullying and all that. She was doing a bill with Al Franken, and it was too sexual. The topic would combine it with too much sexuality, and perhaps, I guess, the gay thing at the time. This was 2010. So she didn't want to touch it after that. So that's what
she wanted to do bullying. She liked you because she wanted you to tell a bullying story, but your bullying story was too much.
Well, Well, not. I don't know if that was exactly it, but she wanted to stay away from it, and I kept calling her and even talking to her press people, saying, "You guys, Anderson Cooper is doing our interviews with people on this bullying and back to school in this fall semester, right before the November elections. Why aren't you getting? You're asking all my people and all of us for money. Why aren't you getting on these shows? They would give you a platform in a second." And she had 2 kids, 2 boys, young boys. They would give you a platform in a second to talk about what's going on in the news. This was when it was like on every day, and 10-year-olds were committing suicide. And they were like, she just doesn't have the time. And it was a punch gut to me after working with her for about 6 months. And I felt bullied again by the popular girl in school, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I have a great story on that. And I've got that in my back pocket too. So anyway, but that's when I just finally said, forget it. The sausage making is horrible. Horrible. I hate them, and even the people I thought were on my side. So that was that, and so then cut to now backstage. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hey, we just got this chat in. Approximately a decade ago, California overwhelmingly voted down gay marriage. Okay. And now look where you are. I mean, isn't that crazy I guess, I don't know. It's so hard to keep up on the news cycle, and it seems like, but that's crazy to me in my mind to see how if that was reality. And then there's this moral superiority still there. Like they never get it wrong, you know?
Yeah. Like, well, you want to know what you want to know now in hindsight? I think that the things are so orchestrated behind the scenes. I mean, I think that COVID has proven how orchestrated everything is behind the scenes at these upper levels, that I think it was all orchestrated. And the fact that we've gotten here so quickly. I mean, growing up gay in the 80s and 90s, I never dreamed that I would be able to get married and have a family. I mean, nobody did. None of us gays over 40 thought that, you know? And also, like Fran Lebowitz says, you know, freedom, my idea of freedom is not marriage or being in the army. So all I wanted as a gay person was leave me the blank alone. That's it. Just my room is my business. That's it. That's where it stops. Just leave me alone. Don't try to hurt me. Don't try to discriminate against me. Just leave me alone. I don't need to be like straight people. And this is what I don't understand. Suddenly we had to mimic straight people. One of the things I love is that I'm gay and I'm not straight. I mean, the last thing I want to do, knowing what I know now, is be straight. You know, I love my life. I love my life. But the whole LGBTQ alphabet soup thing is now out of control. And I've also denounced that on my social media. I'm now LGB, drop the T. I won't go there. I love drag queens. I love transvestites, but I won't go there with a transsexual and pushing it on children.
Okay, hang on. I want to ask you about all that in a second, but real fast, I want to go back to, oh gosh, what was it? Oh, you had talked about, because I want to get into COVID related to what you just said about AIDS and in the 80s and everything, because I saw you post something about how like there's a parallel there with like the way that
I remember.
Can you explain that?
So when this all went down in March, and I saw this snowball effect, and I knew from the minute it didn't feel good in my gut. This was being fabricated into something that was not true. I just knew it. And you know, people need to get over the fact that there are people who can see signs and markers that others cannot. And especially in the environment we live in with media and social media and our attention spans. And so when this started, I was like, what? I mean, this is everything I knew at the time, even in April and March, was it's a bad flu at best. I mean, at worst. I mean, it was a bad flu. And you can go back and it's all documented in real research, not on Lester Holt, NBC. That's all it was. And I have clips of Lester Holt and what's his name, Miguel Gutierrez or whatever, saying that most Americans would only get a mild case. And I saw the protocols being implemented everywhere and the talk of this lockdown. And I'll tell you, that was a gut punch, because during AIDS, I lived in New York in the 80s, in the middle of it at 22, 23. People were dying left and right. Everyone, I know hundreds. If I made a list of the hundreds of dancers that I know that died over AIDS because of the lack of government response. And they didn't care. They didn't care. You can see these at press conferences with Reagan, you know, with the Reagan administration. And you can see that you can go back and do your homework, which so many gays don't have any history of Fauci and the AIDS crisis. Fauci was the devil then as he is the devil now. And he dragged his feet, and not until he could make money on pharmaceuticals and all of that. And I mean, we didn't even have a test for I don't know how long. And didn't know anything, but they weren't worried about it. We weren't masking, we weren't locking down businesses, we weren't doing all of that, nor would gays have ever wanted that, because we know what freedom is and we know what we were wanting. So, but when this happened, I was offended. I told my heterosexual friends, you guys are a bunch of P words, you know? I mean, really? And
why do you say that?
Because this is nothing compared to what we've been through and what.
Oh, I see. You mean you're talking about it right now? You're saying that
COVID, about COVID. Yeah, I know about COVID
okay.
Now. I was like, are you guys kidding me? Do you know what I lived through? You know, I mean, we didn't even know how it was spread for forever. They didn't know anything. People wouldn't touch anybody. People were dying. I went to so many hospitals and saw people. You got AIDS and you were dead. That's what an AIDS diagnosis meant. And the year that ensued was not pretty. I saw many of my dancer friends in the hospitals, just skeletal, you know, lesions. And I mean, you know, that's a pandemic. That's a disease.
Mm-hmm.
And
can you expound upon? Do you have memories of Fauci back then? Because I'll be honest with you, I was like 5 during all of that, so I don't. And I I feel like I've only started to pay attention even, you know, in the last couple of years. This is a very sad reflection of what it's like being in mainstream news. And I'm not saying everybody is like this, but many of us in the mainstream news world are not paying attention to the stuff that the people in the new media world are paying attention to.
No.
And so, you know, you're just accepting these narratives that you're seeing your buddies report about. And,
absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
So even if I've only started really, I think, really paying attention, you know, to the other voices. So do you remember him back then, or do you have any?
I do. I mean, I do. But again, I was 21, 22. I was terrified. You know, and I thought for sure that I had it because I had run around with 10 guys in Mitzi Gaynor in 1980. And it was all starting then. Now, when we went to towns, we went to town. And so I didn't know. I mean, I was terrified that I most certainly had it. You know, I don't know what it was. I was able to avoid it my whole life, and I'm very lucky. But yes, I remember that time. I remember the anger that Larry Kramer, people like Larry Kramer had at Fauci. I mean, they hated each other because he was not doing enough. And Larry Kramer was one of the most vocal in the gay community. But also, you know, there were people like Rachel Maddow tying herself up to the Capitol, you know, with ACT UP, trying to get pharmaceuticals to the market, trying to get things approved to help the gay community. You know, now she's like, you know, a Fauci disciple, but everybody forgets their history. That's the problem. Everyone forgets their history.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Well, it's easy to when the propaganda around you is purposely trying to get you to forget it. And so Isaac is saying, what's
Absolutely.
your take on Dr. Drew's positive position on Fauci during the AIDS crisis? And I don't know if you probably didn't see this, but he may have said this on other channels, but my friend Eric Hunley had him on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how he felt like Fauci did a really good job because nobody wanted to talk about it. And Fauci was like, come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
He came around later. And suddenly, you know, he did start doing something, but he dragged his feet for years before he did. I would say like I think it was like, I can't remember. And again, I was a dancer. I was just trying to survive flying by the seat of my pants and just trying not to get it, you know? So I wasn't that political at the time. I really wasn't that political. I've learned it over the years through my history because I cared and I wanted to learn. So I can't really speak to all of the things that were happening at that time because I was like 22 and, you know, my mind I wasn't an activist at that time like I am now and trying to make a difference now. I was at the beginning of my life, you know, and it was like, I just wanted to work and not die. So I didn't pay attention to Fauci, and I can't speak to what Dr. Drew said. I love what he said about COVID, and I'm with him on all of that. And he was one of the early people that in COVID that was like, this is crazy. This is not what they're telling you.
Though I will say, interestingly, on that stream with Eric, he literally said, I love vaccines. There aren't enough vaccines for me and my family. And I'm like, and he's like, but I still always get sick. I was like, well, maybe you should add something else to your health regimen besides just
I'm not,
which I thought that was really funny, but there aren't enough,
Yeah, and I want to preface this with I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I mean, I got all my vaccines growing up, however, until 1990. I'm glad I wasn't getting vaccinated after 1990 because that changed the whole game.
Well, and you know what? I hate that people even have to say that. I've said this on other live streams, just because you're somebody who, like, I was an environmental reporter, I'm very focused on what's in my water, what's in my food. It doesn't mean I'm anti-water or anti-food. Actually, I'm pro-water and pro-food. That's why I care about what's in it. And it's just too bad that nowadays that label has been attached to anybody who asks any questions about anything like that. They're just anti-science. Even if there are other doctors or other scientists who are actually posing valid questions, how are they being labeled anti-vax? It doesn't make, the former VP of Pfizer, people may know of him, Michael Yeadon.
Gottlieb?
No, well, Yeadon. Have you heard of Michael Yeadon? He's the
former Gottlieb is a big mouthpiece who used to work for the FDA, and he's now a big mouthpiece for one of the, I forget for who, but anyway, go ahead.
For pro or?
No, I mean pro-vaccine.
Yeah. Well, no. So
he's working for Big Pharma. He left the FDA.
Yeah, and they just cycled her. But no, Yeadon is like, I'm not going to get this COVID vaccine, and these are my concerns about it. And he's being labeled like, a hero of the anti-vax movement. He's like, dude, I ran a pharmaceutical company for decades. Like, how can I be? That would be. It's just crazy to me how those labels get thrown around. But anyway, back to your story. It's far more interesting than that. We'll probably get to that stuff anyway. So okay, so take us to so COVID becomes a talking point. What, like early next or last year, and what are you doing at the time? Are you?
I was doing back. In fact, Friday the 13th of March was the last day that I did a CSI, a background thing on CSI. And at that point, that week was the talk of we're probably going to lock down. And so by Monday morning, Newsom had, laid down the law and we were locked down. So that's March 16th. And like everyone, I thought it was just going to be a couple of weeks, but then I started thinking about it. I thought, how is this going to affect our business? There's just, oh my God. I mean, I know what a normal flu season is on a set, and we've never done anything even close to this, and so, you get the whole wash your hands a lot kind of thing. And that was about it. So anyway, so that's where we were. But I knew, like I said earlier today with you, was that I knew that it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right to me. So I was like, for the first couple of weeks, I was like, please, someone, anybody, a conspiracy theorist, anybody, please, there has to be something else going on here. And I just want to hear somebody else question it, because for the first few weeks, I could find nothing, nothing of anyone questioning the narrative. And it just kept snowballing and nobody was stopping or putting the brakes or pumping the brakes. And then I found Steve Deace in a random clip, and he was from the Steve Deace show, Blaze TV. He saved my life. Got me back in touch with my Christianity during this nightmare, got me in touch with science, real science, and this COVID. He wrote an amazing book called The Faucian Bargain, which came out in March and went right to #1 and #2 in Amazon. Of course, mainstream media, buried it. And even on the Wall Street Journal, it was #1 in the country. And that's 83% of all the books Amazon sells, in the country. So it's not a small feat. And I think there's more people out there that know the truth than the media is letting us know. So anyway, but he had Scott Atlas on from Stanford, and Scott Atlas was on the task force with the White House for a little while, from about August till, right after the election for Trump, because that's when Trump was kind of, Fauci's really sinking me. Let me get him the hell out of here, And so Scott came on, but of course he's the one that helped DeSantis stay open and open the state of Florida. And he's the one that's been smeared and attacked, and DeSantis and his roundtable got censored from YouTube. when they had the roundtable about how Florida kept the state open and no one else did, and the science they followed, which was the real science. So finally I found the person. I found the person that was going to help me make sense of this all. And through him, I found people like Daniel Horowitz on CR Conservative Review, which is also a Blaze outlet. And I started listening to real science and research of everybody that was censored, because that's where the truth is. Everyone that's been censored and smeared, that's where you need to go for the truth. You need to find them, the Simone Goals, the American frontline doctors, you need to find them. That will tell you the truth. I also knew that masks didn't work from the very beginning also. It just didn't make sense to me. So that's when I saw the protocols going into place in our business, which are insane. I was so angry. I mean, I had to get over so much anger, and I'm finally this January when I myself got COVID. So I can always walk my talk.
Tell me about what it was like having COVID.
It was 4 days of a seasonal cold. Not even as bad as some of my seasonal colds. I'm 59. So you want me to tell you, go to the test thing here?
Yeah,
so,
let's do it.
Yeah. And so what happened was in June, there was this white paper with all these protocols. I mean, the protocols are insane. So you've got testing 2 and 3 times a week, nasal swab at first, where it went all the way back to the back of your brain. And you had to drive through, take up a whole day, and to work on a TV or a film one day. And then they sometimes still to this day test you in the morning when you get to work and test you at lunch. The Ricardos with Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem, a friend of mine worked that, and they were testing in the morning and at lunch. I started working in September a little bit because I thought, okay, it can't be that bad. And I worked on some shows, and it was a nightmare. We had to sit facing away from each other. We couldn't speak to each other. We had to ride 4 to a transpo van by windows, which were open, or those little short buses, they rented and hired. We would be on set. We had to mask all the time. We had directions on sets of how we could walk, like at the grocery store when they attempted that stupid thing. We would have these COVID monitors that were basically, we call them COVID Nazis, who were just brainwashed millennials, and a new department, and they were making money. So they were just like Nazis to us. There's a picture that I sent you Saturday of me in a mask and a shield, an N95 and a shield on set for a show called All Rise. Go ahead.
Pull it up. I'm going to pull it up.
Anyway, so this is how we had to live. There was an assistant PA going around with a 6-foot pole, making sure that our seats were 6 feet apart. When we changed before COVID, we changed like cattle in a corral, with maybe some curtains around it. Now we had to have separate changing booths, and they had to be sprayed down with sanitizer between each background actor. The amount of money being spent, to this day, they're still doing this, Allison, till this day. And they have just decided that on June 15th, they're not going to lift it, as Gavin Newsom is allegedly going to maybe lift it. They're going to continue till June 30th, and they're not making a decision on mandated vaccines until June 30th. So they're still considering mandating vaccines to work on a set, which they're already giving vaccines on studio lots to friends and family and workers that are working currently. So I got tested for a show, going back to the testing in January. I got tested for a show at Paramount, and I tested negative twice. And then Saturday I test positive, and I was supposed to work on Monday. They said, you can't work. You're bringing it up. Yeah.
I was, but it didn't. Yeah, keep going. It didn't work.
Yeah, whenever you're ready. So I got tested positive, and they called me, of course, Saturday evening and said, you can't work Monday because you tested positive, because this is the antigen test they do that's pretty rapid. You get it within a day normally. So I decided I didn't feel anything, and I went and got my own test at an urgent care here that gave the test, and my union covered all COVID, which is spending money on. And I went and got tested and was tested negative. So I went back on Monday and tested again because they said it might be a false positive because you tested negative on Friday. So I go back Monday and I tested, but the woman that's giving me the test there tells me, you should really just get a PCR test, because if you really want to know if you have COVID, you need to take a PCR test. And I said, what? I thought I was getting that on set. I mean, so then what are you saying that I tested for? She says, well, that's an antigen test for flu and influenza and cold, regular colds, not a PCR test that doesn't even confirm if you have COVID and can give you false positive, especially at threshold cycles. I know what I'm talking about. And I said, okay. She said, well, they're paying for that. Why don't you get a PCR test today? This was Monday. There I am. This is how wonderful it is to work on a set.
Finally got it.
I feel like it's something out of, you know, Silence of the Lamb or something like that. You know, I mean, this is sitting on set, separated 6 feet from people. And this is for All Rise, and they were doing current time. So not only that, I had to keep the mask on when I was on set playing an attorney. Nightmare. So I got tested with a PCR test, and that was going to take 5 days. I'm on my way home. She called me and said, hey, Felix, it came back positive, the nasal swab antigen test. So you probably have it. Now you've gotten 2 positive tests and one negative. And I had started feeling something in my throat. So I run to Trader Joe's, I get all my food, and I lay down and wait for the sweet angel of death. And I had a 90, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, you know, let's face it, I've heard all the news too, right? And I'm in a bad age group, but I don't have any comorbidities. I'm a fitness trainer. I take all my vitamins. Plus I've been taking quercetin, you know, glutathione, zinc, magnesium, all of those that they hate us telling you about. I had a temperature of like 98 that night. I felt it spike a little bit because my normal is 96, 97. And then from then on, it was just, and I take cough syrup because I wanted to break up anything that might develop from the 99-cent store, no less. And I was done by Friday. And then I get my PCR test. But that week I was trying to call the lab because I wanted to know the PCR threshold. Because I also wanted to make sure that I had COVID and not a cold, because all it felt like to me was a cold. So I call the lab. They're giving me the runaround, telling me, oh, it depends on patients. And I said, what? And we don't give out that information. And I said, what? This is my bodily fluid. You're testing it for me and my insurance company. I want to know the threshold. So they gave me the runaround. Finally, on Friday, I get my results, and it's positive PCR for COVID. Somehow, they got me through to the head of the lab that day. And this is where it gets good. And at first, he's trying to give me the runaround. Like, yeah, you know, well, you know, we can't really tell you. But I said, so I started telling him all the science that I knew about PCR threshold and what I'd learned in the past year, because this is January. So he figured I knew what I was talking about. And then I told him that I was an actor here in town working on sets. And I said to him, I said, doctor, so you mean to tell me that if I get an antigen test on a set, that is not telling me that I have COVID, yet still being reported to the city as a COVID case? He said, yes. And I said, and really, I don't know that until I have a PCR test? He said, yes. And he said, Felix, off the record, none of the studios, producers, or anyone else in Hollywood is listening to the doctors and the labs. They're doing whatever they want. We've told them that they should not test anyone after they test positive once for the antigen, because your body will then be shedding viruses, whatever the virus is, for 90 days. And you'll probably get false positives. So then I talked to one of my COVID monitor friends, and he tells me that I started investigating. And he started telling me, so I find this out, and I'm like, oh my God. You know, everybody thinks they're getting tested for COVID. Also, the same thing in the tents all over town, getting testing, you know, drive-through testing with people lined up for miles. So also, a COVID test is $220 per person. This isn't a business that nickels and dimes us on overtime and makes them 10-minute increments, so they don't have to pay us 15 or a half an hour overtime. I mean, how does this make sense? This is when I knew that everything was rotten from the top down. And this was a scam and a political theater. And where better to go than Hollywood for drama? And Hollywood will give you the drama, and they've got all the props and all the ability to do this, combined with the mainstream media, which is run from this town, you know? And go ahead.
Okay, 2 quick questions. And answer in whatever order you want. So one thing I remember seeing come out of there was how these small restaurants were having to close down, and yet Hollywood would get to have these big elaborate lunch. You'd have these big tents
outside tents
outside. Yeah, there was that restaurant owner who was catering, like showing that video went viral. Okay, so my first question is about that.
That was in the Valley, and Will Wilt did a whole thing on her, and the news media picked up on it because it was the hypocrisy of Hollywood still being able to work. Somehow Gavin Newsom and Hollywood coordinated and somehow things came together for Hollywood to be an essential job. You know, so we became essential workers, basically. But in doing that, we had to follow these extreme protocols because they knew that people would be like, what the hell is Hollywood doing working? You know? But again, you got to understand that for the big orchestrated picture, we got to keep making content to keep people happy at home. That is no lie. You know? So Hollywood is and always has been an important component to all propaganda, you know? And especially now when we had streaming and all of that and people could sit at home for hours and binge. So, you know, that was a very important component to this happening at this time because it could never have happened when we had 3 networks, you know. Nobody would stay at home and they would have been in an uproar, but, you know, they've got us numbed out to the fact where, oh, I'll just stay at home and order everything and watch my Netflix. Go ahead.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure, I'm going. Anyway, go ahead.
No. Okay. Sorry. One other question. When I talk about my old industry of mainstream news, I feel like the average person in my business, my old business, is a filter for information without necessarily always knowing that they're spreading bias, propaganda, whatever you want to call it.
That show, that one of the shows that I love that you did was the one you said that they just get, the journalists these days are so lazy, they just get info from the government and say,
or they just don't have the time, or it's just like a daddy thing, you know. It's like daddy told us, you know, daddy told us, and so it's just that archetypal, like, you haven't dealt with your daddy or mommy issues and you're going to work and you're a human just like everybody else. And so you're just trusting authority. So it's any number of things, but I was just curious, like in Hollywood, do you feel like they're a bunch of bots too, or do they really know they're, you know, what they're doing?
100%, especially in my department background, but 100%. There is so much competition. You have to understand, in Hollywood, we don't get hired for 10 years on one job. We go from job to job to job. And then they can always use the excuse of, well, he just wasn't right for the job, you know, or he didn't have the right look. Although we've got all this, you know, critical race crap going on, and it's like we're not supposed to have any discrimination, yet I'm looking for a Latino to play this part, or I'm looking for a Black person to play this part in South LA as a gang member. So, you know, and then people are saying, why are we looking at color? Well, the author didn't freaking write his story that way. You know, he's doing real life, but they're not. I mean, Hollywood isn't doing real life anymore. They stopped doing that like about 10 years ago. Everything's made up.
Hollywood is just like, because they do like to, it does seem like they always, like the Oscars or whatever else, are always jumping on whatever the popular thing is. Do you think these people believe they really care about these causes, or like, do they know it's an ego thing?
No, they're on it just like corporations are right now. They're on this right now because they think it's where the money is going to be. And I can tell you that 80%, just like in the country, there's a silent majority in this town that isn't saying anything. I'm like one person. I have tried to make videos. I have called out the union. I have called out the head of the union, Duncan Crabtree Ireland, who is like a radical left, and Kateris, the president. I have called them out. I have tagged all my videos. My videos are public on YouTube on my channel. Anyone can access them, the small ones that I did and sent you, where I was calling them out and wanting transparency and saying, you guys aren't following the science. Who are you following? They didn't care. It's like everything nowadays. Just ignore the truth tellers. Just ignore the real science and don't bring it up, and just keep pounding our narrative. That's all. That's all. And the narrative and COVID, and it, you know, how did COVID become like, if you have a mask in your car with your windows rolled up, you're a Biden supporter. If your windows are rolled down and no mask, you're a Trump supporter. You know, I mean,
I saw a guy running by himself outside on the river near here with a mask on. I didn't understand. I really don't understand that.
I live in Beverly Hills. I live in an apartment in Beverly Hills, so don't think that I live in Beverly Hills. It's an old apartment, and they walk their dogs every day here in the morning and at night, and in the evenings. It's like a promenade here on my street. It's a great street to walk on, and I'll sit out there and watch people with double masks till this day. Now, if you have masks on, don't you think that you probably got a vaccine? You know, if you're that scared, I bet you went and got a vaccine, you know,
Yeah.
but you're still double masking with your dog walking alone in the 90-degree weather in sunlight.
David was, I think he left the stream, but he was a little annoyed
sorry.
at us, calling us tinfoil hatters just for saying.
Oh, are you
talking about the
serious?
vaccine.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
I mean, I do. I'll say this much because I do like to. I really want to clarify this for people. The reason that I bring on doctors who question Fauci or question the narrative is not even because I'm trying to push people towards like whatever or another health choice, because that's what annoys me about what's happening right now is that people are being, you know,
do whatever you want,
like cattle, and blinded and everything. And so it's actually to me, it's like the people who are just putting on the tinfoil hat in the opposite sense, where it's just like, whatever you say, Fauci, just beam it to my head. And it's just going to, you know, I'm going to microwave it in. Like, I'm trying to push back on that again, not because I'm, you know, or you necessarily, or anybody else I'm bringing on this. I mean, some people, I guess, maybe some of the doctors that I have are probably trying to give people a different medical opinion, but it's mostly because I'm just tired of seeing how few dissenting voices are being allowed out there. And I just want to give them a chance so that people can make an informed decision, like what happened to that. And now if you want to talk about what other scientists and doctors are saying, like, yeah, it's tinfoil hat time. And I blame in large part my old industry for that, because it really has been set up as like you're an anti-science person. Like, you live in the woods, you know, you dig a hole to go to the bathroom, you wipe with your left hand. You're like that kind of person. If you even want to have any discussion about this, you couldn't possibly have a PhD or an MD or anything like that. There couldn't, you know, it's just the pro-science people.
And that's what California used to be, the hippy dippy people that were organic and vegan and didn't want to do medicine. Suddenly,
right? That is the weirdest thing too. And now they're like the anti-vax empire. I heard that the other day.
Yeah.
I'm like, the anti-vax empire. What about the pharmaceutical?
Look, it's like everything. A, I think really our downfall started with reality TV. B, stop making famous people stupid. Stop making stupid people famous is really the truth. And your old business has done that. They're making stupid people famous that are just towing the money line and the big pharma line. So if people deny that, they've been in a hole for the whole year, because if you still trust everything they're saying, then you just obviously are only listening to 30 minutes of Lester Holt at night. So, you can call me tinfoil, but I can back it up with all the research. That's like when I went on Facebook and started saying all this stuff and everything I'd learned for a year, because I was trying to protect myself. I thought, I don't want to annihilate my career completely. Now I don't give a hell what happens, because I will not toe this line. And it's become completely, so obviously a Marxist, BLM, critical race theory thing. It started with the Me Too movement also, and it will backlash. It will backlash, but I want no part of promoting any of that, because I know the truth. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me ask you about, because I remember seeing someone said in the last stream, and because I wanted to give you a chance to respond to this, from one cult to another, say no to the duopoly, like saying you were in this left, mainline liberal kind of, because I kind of see the way the people you're talking about, Newsom, Gillibrand, these people almost feel like neoliberal Clinton Democrats, not necessarily the people who are like, hey, let's talk about getting people some health care or whatever else. They're focused on a kind of the fake identitarianism that you're talking about. Do you think you just switch from one mindless way of looking at things to another mindless way of looking at things? That's essentially what the guy was saying. Yeah, I want to give you the chance to respond to that.
About how I switched?
Yep.
Because I think that they have a very good way, and I've realized this now over my 41 years after leaving home at 17, of manipulating us with identity politics. And they did that with the gays. And for a time there, maybe it was valid for the gays because everyone hated us and wanted to kill us. That was on the other side. So we gravitated towards the Democratic Party. Maybe in the 80s and the 90s, they were maybe a little bit more on our side. But now it's like Ben Shapiro told Ariel, the lesbian that came out as conservative, and was on Dave Rubin the other day. She's fantastic and I love her. I need to meet her. Is that, Ben Shapiro came up to her at an event and said, you know, Republicans haven't cared about gays since like 1990. you know? So, but Democrats have the ability and to guide the narrative and say they're out to get us. They're out to get us. And, you know, my parents taught me coming to this country, you can do whatever you want based on character and merit. They never even told me that I wasn't white and Hispanic and I was Latino, that there was a big difference or something. They just never did. And that's how they succeeded in this country. And that's how I've succeeded. I've never let anything stand in my way. I went into a business that was very gay friendly because I was a dancer first. So I never really had to hide or come out. But in the business, I do remember in the 80s and 90s being told by agents and managers, go see her, Karen Kaiser on the Upper West Side, who was this just nightmare casting director for big commercials at the time in the 80s. If she even gets the hint that you're gay, she will never see you again. I mean, that's what it was in the business. That's how it was in business. You could not be gay. And no one could know you were gay. And this was when I was auditioning in my 20s, you know, and into my early 30s. So, but this year I saw what my awakening started, and let me barely be clear about this. In 2016, my awakening started when I saw what the Democrats are willing to do to each other, what they were willing to do to each other within their own party, and the lack of honesty and the lying that was going on between Bernie and Hillary and the primaries being stolen. And I don't even know how I was a Bernie supporter at the time, but I knew I didn't want Hillary. And by the way, the Clintons have been grooming Gavin Newsom for a long time for his, which I think is now dead and buried with his behavior here in California. But he's been one of their proteges, you know, along with Nancy's, you know, he's Nancy's nephew and all that. So, so I, at the beginning of this, suddenly realized, oh my God, they're willing to decimate us. And that's when I decided COVID was all politics as I started doing my science, and I realized they were going to take this and expand on it and use never let a crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel says, right? Never let good crisis go to waste, you know? And you got to remember the ties of politics in Hollywood too. Ari Emanuel, Rahm's brother, you know, their other brother who is a major medical person and I think was during the Obama administration. You know, Hollywood is so connected to the Democrats and mainstream media, and they all just feed each other. So the power behind that is insurmountable, it seems at times. And they're the loudest voice, you know? So it was just, that's when I discovered it was all bullshit. And I woke up because I knew from 2016 that the Democrats were shady anyway. And I jumped ship. I walked away, you know, Brandon Stark and all that, you know, I walked away and I understand it. And I wasn't afraid to go back and mend fences from people that I was an a-hole to and apologize and say I was wrong. And I did. And they welcomed me back. And as Ariel was saying to Dave Rubin and Dave Rubin too, I have found more tolerance and more acceptance and more loyalty with the new conservative and Christian and religious friends that I have met than I ever had in my gay community or in the friends that I've had for 30 years that canceled me. My entire family canceled me in January when I started talking about all of this and the COVID. My brother-in-law and my sister moved to Florida and are bashing DeSantis, meanwhile left this state of a prison, living in Florida in their retirement, having ridden on my father's coattails of American Dream, both having been immigrants themselves. And they're sitting there masking in their house, you know, and bashing DeSantis while they live in a free state and my career has been annihilated. I can't even work, you know, so I lost my train of thought on that. But
no, it's okay. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
So where do you go from here? Because you're now, you know, and people should know, like, link in the description for where they can follow you. Maybe you'll be on other channels, you know, or other platforms in the near future. But, you know, since you're talking about this and you've shared like even screenshots with me of people who are like casting directors or people in the union or whatever, who are like not going to like the stuff that you're saying, or maybe they already know what you're saying. So are you just basically, I mean, I guess like, well, if this is it, this is it, or, and why now, I guess, and I guess maybe it's the COVID stuff that got you here as kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But yeah, I'm just curious, like, do you think you'll leave LA? Do you think you're going to stay there? What do you do if
I have no idea? I've been treading water like everyone in California pretty much for the whole 15 months, seeing, well, you know, next week. Now I have to tread water again because maybe they'll lift the mandates on sets on June 30th, although I'm hearing that really not till September are they going to actually lift the mask mandate. There are so many robots in this town that will do whatever they're told because they think they're going to be stars. I've been in the business 41 years. I know the reality of that is basically like playing super lotto. And you have to follow, I've always just followed my truth. I've always been slightly difficult to work with. I know that this year going back, I was a regular on The Rookie for 2 seasons, including their pilot. And I think this year, they knew my personality in 2.5 years. Not that I was trouble or anything, but they knew that I was, I'm a strong personality. And they probably said, we don't need him on set with all of this going on. So I wasn't asked back. They ask back the people who are complacent and compliant. That's all Hollywood is now, is be compliant. I will never be compliant. I'm being bullied by everyone left and right. I was bullied growing up. I will never be bullied again. And finally, I realized that I had to honor my father's legacy of freedom and the American dream and fight against this Marxism, critical race theory, and LGBT alphabet soup and all of that as a gay man in my 50s. And also, I'm going to be retiring soon. I thought, you know what? I've always been able to reinvent myself. I've cleaned apartments in New York City when I was younger. I've done Uber. I've done all sorts of things to try to survive. I will always survive, just like my father did with a shirt on his back, landing on a boat on the shores. So finally, when I made that, all of a sudden, I started getting support from people that I would reach out to, and something just keeps telling me, Felix, you're on the right track. Keep telling the truth, 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 truth. And that will lead me to a better place, whether it's in this business, whether it's in the conservatives, because there is a big conservative side. I think this will foster an entire another Hollywood that is conservative and more that believes in God, that believes in American values, afraid to fly the American flag. So I do think, so I'm just letting life take me where it's taking me and is taking me. But like those screenshots, I'm sure people have shots of everything that I've done, because until February, all of my stuff was public. I really screamed and hollered. I'm sure that in the future, wherever I get, those will come out like they have for other people. I don't care. I don't care. Bring it. Bring it. I've been bullied. Bring it. It doesn't matter. You're not going to hurt me. You will have to kill me. Go ahead.
That was going to kind of be one of my final questions. So I know we could talk forever, but to wrap it up, but first, one point I wanted to touch on, and you don't have to necessarily respond to this if you have any thoughts, but I've interviewed a lot of different people on this channel from different political leanings. I think probably what unites a lot of them, because what I do is sort of questioning narratives and kind of anti-censorship material, is like Matt Lucene, for instance, who was a Bernie supporter who was protesting for election integrity, and learning that there are people on the left who, well, what they want is like, they want a healthcare option, like a government, healthcare option. And they do question the establishment power's control over things like the narrative. They're not necessarily thinking COVID is, all the rules around COVID is a good thing. And I because I want to make sure, since what I like to get people to think about here, and the reason I bring voices that challenge narratives, like you're challenging a very powerful narrative in Hollywood, which runs a lot of the way we think about things in this country and the world, is to think about the fact that there is I really do believe there is a growing movement that defies that two-party narrative of people who really do feel like they're left out of the establishment. Say that again?
The movement of truth.
Yeah, I mean, and then it doesn't necessarily have to be like a right versus left thing. I think it's a top versus bottom thing, and there are people waking up on all the different sides here that would not, they wouldn't consider themselves a conservative like you, but they would be totally on board with what you're saying about, the lockdowns and Hollywood virtue signaling and the identitarianism of it all, and just like the corporate gain here and the aligning of the tech companies with the government and the messaging and all that stuff. I do think that you're going to start seeing more and more. I mean, I think a lot of people call that populism, I guess, but I think we're going to see that more and more of this alignment of people who, are of a top, people who feel like they're on the bottom of the power structure, who may have very different, in some cases, political viewpoints on healthcare and, maybe wars or whatever. But at least on this topic of like bucking the establishment power structure and just like the control that the oligarchy has over our lives, I think there's going to be a lot more alignment from people on that end.
Listen, one of the people that I discovered this year and helped me become a better man is Jordan Peterson, and he has said anything that anything that the truth does is for the best, no matter what. Even if it seems like it's not, the truth will always be for the betterment of anything that the truth reveals. So you can think that the truth is going to create some negative or something, but it's not. And another favorite quote of mine is, anything that can be destroyed by the truth, including the Democracy and anybody else you follow, if they can be destroyed by truth, then they should be destroyed by truth. That's it. And Steve Deace is somebody I follow, and he will call out everybody, and he's a conservative Christian, right leaning, but he'll call out everybody. And that's what I've always done in my life. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. I'd rather be told the truth, and then I will make my decisions going forward based on the actual truth and the actual science, which is what I've done all year, because I followed the actual truth and the actual science. And here I am to live to tell that I got COVID and it was a cold, and I'm not ever going to get the vaccine, So I wasn't planning on getting the vaccine anyway. So there you have, anything that can be destroyed by truth should be. And I think that people are afraid of the responsibility of truth. The responsibility of truth is one of the most important things in life. And we've gotten away from that. Nobody wants to work that hard. They don't. They don't want to work as hard as I'm working doing my research. Everybody says I don't have the time. They watch snippets and then they give me talking points. I'm like, whoa, that isn't even going to work, because I've debated all that for a year in my head. And now I'm coming out and talking with the knowledge I have. So until you go and research what I'm posting or the things that I'm giving you to post, I'm not telling you to believe me. I'm saying go research it. I would get debates. I'm like, no, this isn't Facebook Rumble in 2010. You know what I'm saying? I'm not arguing with you. I already did all this research. So truth. How I want to end this.
Okay, well, I'll let you end it there. Everybody go check out Felix's YouTube channel. The link is in the description.
If anybody wants to email me, felixmontano@protonmail.com. And all of my COVID videos in Hollywood are on my YouTube channel, which is public and open. So you can go there, share the hell out of those. YouTube.com/Felix Montano. And and Allison, I just want to say thank you, because for the audience, I sent this out to all these news outlets, my story and my videos. And Allison was like the one that got back to me. And since then, in the last couple of weeks that we've been communicating, we've gotten to know each other. I adore her, and I adore what you're doing. And I just thank you for giving me this platform to be able to at least tell a few more people my truth, So
absolutely.
Thank you. And,
no, it's been my honor. I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing this. It's never, obviously, as I said in the last stream, we're both showmen, which we couldn't get our act together on Saturday, but that's because Hollywood's conspiring against us. But yeah, even still, telling your story is different than portraying someone else in a movie or on stage or something. Yeah. And so there's definitely a very different feel to it. Yeah. So I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, everybody. Lily.
Say that again.
Our producer Lily, we'd like to thank her.
Yeah, our producer. Yeah, and I'm gonna
for going down and taking a nap when we needed her to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you to my husband too for helping me stream on Rockfin. So I hope that all worked out well. Okay, so everybody, don't forget to check out the links for my other platforms in the description of the video. Again, if you're watching this, it probably isn't going to matter because you saw the whole thing, but just in case, I upload a clip separately. I should add that, you know, I have been clipping shorter versions for YouTube to try to incentivize people to get over to the other platform. So if you're watching this later and this has been clipped and is shorter, then definitely check out the platforms that are in the description so that you can see the entire interview with Felix. And you guys take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Bye.